And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this very special segment today on the 19th day of May 2022. Well, partly sunny and a little bit of rain about. Yeah, there's a bit of drizzle. However, the good news is the ferries are back from today. So it might be running in a limited capacity, not the full capacity, but they are back as of today. So that's good news. So 19 degrees and partly sunny right here in Brisbane at the time of this broadcast. So there's quite a lot to go through today. So we have, first of all, our daily news update, and then we will be joining in with our daily India report. Well, first of all, projects that have been promised at the last election still remain unfinished. So right now we have seen our politicians go and make some major policy announcements, some promises to some community organizations, and of course to some communities at large as well. But they are, as mentioned, promises or election promises that if they get elected, this is what they will do. But then many times there are many promises which are made and they're not kept, because people have to then lobby, remind, follow up to get a commitment of that election promise to come to fruition. So here's some of the ones which have still not been fulfilled since last election.
7-year-old Parker comes here for swimming every week. At just 17 metres, the privately owned pool is the only place in Torquay where there are lessons available, and soon it will close down.
For the older kids who've outgrown this pool, the nearest options are at least 30 minutes away into Geelong. And with 3 young kids as a solo parent, that's a 3-hour round trip.
In the 2019 election campaign, the Coalition promised $93.5 million for a new pool in Torquay, as well as pools in 7 other marginal or coalition seats. 1 has been completed and 1 has started construction. The rest have stalled. With rising construction costs and inflation, pools are costing upwards of $50 million, and councils are scrambling to meet the funding shortfall.
Quite often they haven't been consulted on and they haven't been developed fully when the announcements are made, and they often cost significantly more for a community in the long run.
It's been an issue for decades across state and federal levels and across all the major political parties. None of them have a transparent and clear plan for putting in community infrastructure in growth suburbs.
The Federal Sports Minister, Richard Colbeck, says the commitments are contributions only and that local councils are responsible for meeting full costs.
The pool promised for Torquay is still being designed, and the ABC has been told rising costs are likely to delay construction.
Really, kids need swimming at least twice a week. So at the moment, I actually can't achieve that without a local pool.
Rachel Clayton, ABC News.
There you go, election promises, promises as they reckon. Well, right now, what's happening on the campaign trail as we're getting closer to the day? So Anthony Albanese, as he addresses the National Press Club.
Dr. Hewson had to fight his way through anti-GST demonstrators.
I need to know exactly what type of cake to give a detailed answer.
This is the question for Dr. Hewson. Is it taxable? Is it VAT-able? The answer is it is.
Do you apologise for those young people who are told to go get a job?
No, I didn't say go get a job. Oh. Somebody just
somebody
get the
putting
context
words in your mouth. No.
How are you, Mark? Good. How are you? I'm very well. Good to see you.
It's not that cold.
There has been an exasperation in this election campaign with the media, and gotcha questions, and stories about gaffes. But past elections show how powerful one moment or one line can be in shaping perceptions. And if Anthony Albanese wins on Saturday, it will be despite such moments.
National unemployment rate at the moment is, I think it's 5.4, sorry. I'm not sure what it is.
We're not proposing.
I'm sorry.
The opposition leader was seen to have won all 3 of the leaders' debates.
When you've been a minister, we've had the Port of Darwin sold to a company connected with the Chinese Communist Party.
All these things make different impressions on voters. They also make impressions on the journalists reporting on elections. Less than a week ago, an opinion poll in The Australian suggesting Labor would win an 80-seat majority saw journalists travelling with the leaders framing questions about winning to the opposition leader and about losing to the Prime Minister. Today, new polls show the lead has narrowed. The election is now very tight. Expectations have changed again. All of that made today's appearance at the National Press Club all the more important for Anthony Albanese.
I'm seeking the honour of serving as Prime Minister of the best country in the world.
Today there were two topics at the top of the campaign agenda: a renewed focus on falling wages, but also Labor's budget costings.
The shadow treasurer who's running around saying a couple of $1 billion here and there over a year is not much. It's not a big deal. Well, it is a big deal, Jim. It's a very big deal.
It was the issue of costings which yesterday produced a campaign image which played large on the television. Anthony Albanese was showing walking away, or running according to some, from a press conference where he protests he had already answered 18 questions.
Mr Albanese, will your deficit be higher or lower than the coalition?
I don't want to disappoint you for Thursday.
By this morning, the government was claiming that its estimates were that Labor's policies would cost $25 billion more than the government's over 4 years.
You have to answer eventually.
Labor is not denying that they will spend more than the government, but is arguing it is a quality spend rather than spending on pork barrelling.
We've got $1 trillion in debt, and so the Australian people aren't focused on press conferences or the timing of costings release. They're focused on whether or not they can feed their kids under Scott Morrison.
Labor argues the late release of costings is just what the coalition did in 2010 and 2013. But this sits uncomfortably with its pledge for better standards and accountability.
We have released with every policy, with every single policy we've released, how much it would cost over the forward estimates.
The government announced yesterday that it would save $1 billion by imposing constraints on public service spending. Today, the opposition leader announced $750 million of savings from putting some of the funds that the government distributes to target electorates back into the budget, where it says it can be better spent on delivering services, and that there would be more savings to come.
Yesterday, they stood up and said we're going to gut the public service even more. Well, you know what that leads to? Robo-debt. It doesn't save money, it costs money, because you take humans out of human services and it has devastating consequences for real people. It costs lives. Lives, as well as over $1 billion to taxpayers.
The other new piece of information today was about wages. The so-called wage price index rose by just 2.4% for the year, compared to 5.1% inflation, once again confirming that real wages are going backwards, one of Labor's major charges against the government.
Wages will rise for all the reasons that I've said. Wages will rise because of unemployment coming down.
A fall of 2.7%. What a hit. This delivers the biggest cuts to real wages in more than 20 years.
At the beginning of the campaign, Scott Morrison said the election should not be a referendum about his government, but about a choice for the future. At its end, Anthony Albanese seems to agree.
The choice Australians have to make this Saturday is which party can be trusted to solve these problems. The Liberal government that created them, a Prime Minister who denied them and then blamed them on someone else, or a Labor Party driven by a determination to learn the lessons of the pandemic, to face up to the big challenges confronting our country and to bring people together to build a better future.
So there you go, up against the campaign, and we will see. A few more days to go and we'll find out. Well, right now, as we know, we discussed yesterday in the real estate update that there's so much happening in the rental scene. So the rental and renters are facing a crisis.
Nick Crowley has had to take renting in his stride. He's been evicted from 2 houses at Orange in central west New South Wales because landlords wanted to lease them for double the price.
If they're getting offered double the amount of rent, then they'd be mad not to take it, I think. But from my perspective, it was a bit of a bugger.
He eventually found a house through friends.
At one point, I applied with 2 other blokes for a couple of different houses in town through property agents, and we were up against 60 or 70 different applicants, I think, and trying to get a house that way was very difficult.
The trend of landlords chasing higher returns is one of the factors being blamed on the shortage of available rentals.
What I've noticed the most is that more and more homes are being bought for business purposes to be renting out on the short-term rental market.
The Shoalhaven Mayor says it's making people homeless and hollowing out communities.
Because there's not people living from Monday to Sunday, that the services pack up and go because there's not a permanent population.
The state government has given councils the option to limit the number of days properties can be leased as short-term stays, but some say it would provide housing security for tenants. On the far south coast, the Bega Valley knocked back the offer for its 900 short-term lets.
It'd only be about 15% of those would actually become available in the rental market, so it's very minimal.
Instead, councils want the state government to introduce bed taxes and create zones for short-term stays to give renters a chance. Joanna Woodburn, ABC News.
So there you go, the market forces and of course regulation and balancing the books between affordability, profit and mortgage repayments on investors' loans as well. So there's so many things there to put into the equation. Well, right now, Victorian schools will remain open despite the teacher shortages. So we know there's acute shortage in many areas, including the Australian Electoral Commission, which says some of the booths might not be operating or open. So all the booths that have been advertised that will be open on Saturday, some of them might not open due to shortage of labour.
Jai and Nate thought homeschooling was a thing of the past.
So I thought that last time we did it, it'd be the end and we wouldn't have to do it again.
But they're preparing to learn from home for the rest of the week.
It is what it is. They're challenging times for everybody. Everybody's doing the best they can.
Their school, Caroline Chisholm Catholic College in Melbourne's West, is sending some students home.
So we had 28 staff absent on Monday, which is the equivalent of 83 classes needing to be covered. So that's about 30% of our staff.
In Shepparton, Notre Dame Catholic College has also cancelled classes after losing almost a third of its teachers to illness. And Greater Shepparton Secondary College has also sent some students home.
We've had outstanding support from staff where they've covered their colleagues when they've been away, but in reality there comes a time when the teachers have so many extras they can do.
Casual relief teachers like Paul Bevilacqua are doing their best to fill the gaps.
That puts a pressure on teachers having to take extra schedules, extra duties, adds to the workload of a group of people that are already overloaded.
The key criteria for me, and I'm sure for parents and carers right across the state, is that schools are open and students are learning face-to-face.
The Victorian government say they don't plan on closing schools again and have pointed out that only one government school have sent home 1 year level today. But there's concern from some parents that while classes are being held, learning has been disrupted.
Yes, there are staffing challenges. Of course there are. We are still in a global pandemic and we are heading into a flu season.
He says
to a flu season and of course coming out of a pandemic or still in the pandemic or the tail end of it, as we say. But there are staff shortages throughout the nation and in many industries. And we've had reports of similar cases all around. As I mentioned before, that even the Australian Electoral Commission is facing shortages and may not open all of the booths. Some of the booths, election booths advertised, might not be open on Saturday. So please do check which are the booths that are open, that are closest to you. And if you qualify for pre-polling, That's the best way. Get it done, out of the way, and save all the rest on Saturday. Well, right now, moving on, a lot of natural disasters that happen. We've got fire, we got floods, all sorts of things happening. So if looking at building for the future, should we adopt a more predictive model? And if we do, what would it look like? What would it be? How do you predict what's going to happen? Well, you can predict many things, but, of course, nature always takes its own course. So, there are things that are predictable, but then things happen.
I bought the place at the end of 2016 and I knew it was in a flood zone. I'm a low-income earner and my choices were limited in terms of affordable housing in Lismore.
In 2017, Lismore was inundated by an 11.6 metre flood, the worst in more than 40 years. Almost a foot of water went through Jo Grove's home. After that, she received a grant to help elevate her property well above a 1 in 100 year flood event. It's now 4 metres off the ground.
I believe that raising the house would make it flood safe. We raised it to that level because that was the maximum level that we were legally allowed to go at the time.
But this February, an even higher flood devastated Lismore, topping the level of the worst case scenario predicted just once every 100 years.
I had 1.25 metres of water through my home. I was insured for the 2017 flood, but after that the premiums were so high that they were unaffordable. So I have no flood insurance.
There's a little moment of joy, eh?
Around the country, houses are built to avoid a flood that's expected, on average, once a century. That guide is built into the planning rules of state governments and local councils.
It's a statistical model to help risk planners who are responsible for where people live, how their homes are constructed.
Greg Mullins used to be the boss of New South Wales Fire and Rescue, as well as the association that represents all emergency services in Australia.
And in reality, as we saw recently in Brisbane and Lismore, you might get 3 in 3 weeks.
Floods that go beyond the 1 in 100 year level, like the one that occurred this year in Lismore, have been considered rare enough that for some types of infrastructure, it's a risk that's okay to take. But climate scientists say those calculated risks are no longer accurate.
It's actually a 1 in 100 year event.
This is a natural disaster of unprecedented proportions.
This is an unprecedented event.
We keep getting told these events are like unprecedented, once in a lifetime, but they seem to happen with alarming regularity.
Climate scientists have been providing these sorts of warnings about the increasing impact of climate extremes for more than 2 decades.
David Caroli was until this year head of the Climate Science Centre at the National Science Agency, the CSIRO. He says we need to work out how frequently such disasters return.
Those return periods are essentially worthless now because we know that the return periods, for instance, for extreme rainfall or flooding, is based on out-of-date historical data.
We're flying blind.
So when we're looking at the data which is out of date and we're looking at historical data, we're also looking at weather patterns and other things. But then, as I mentioned before, nature always does take its own course. So, how do you predict that? Of course, it is very, it was said that, many floods are 1 in 100 years, but but look at what's happened. So 2011 and here we are, 2022. So, it's, you don't have to be a senior mathematician to work out that it's not 100 years. So, things do happen, nature does take its course. But right now, back onto the campaign trail while our Prime Minister addresses the Australia-Israel Chamber of Commerce. Yes, we're ready to go. Sorry about that. We'll have to come back to that and see if we can connect live to that once again. Well, right now, let's keep moving on and we'll go to the next news. After that predictive modeling is the Facebook has been accused of deliberately blocking the Australian emergency services and charity pages.
A big portion of Mission Beat is to make sure that people know that there are services available when they need them and that we care about their well-being and that we're helping them make it through what they need to get through either the winter or a cold night.
Like many charities, Mission Australia has come to rely on social media, using Facebook to help deliver services to homeless people.
Actually going onto our website, tracking down our contact number, jumping on the phone is not something that people would typically do as much as they once did. Now we're finding that it's easier for them to reach out to us on Facebook, send us a message, let us know about their situation. Being able to...
And this election is a choice between those who know how to run a strong economy or there being a weaker one. The certainty that comes with what you know about the strength of our government and our economic plan that will take us forward, or the uncertainty of what we don't know. It's a choice between a government that knows how to manage money and a Labor Party that won't even tell you what their policies cost and run away when asked those questions. So it's a serious choice that Australians have this weekend, a very serious choice with profound implications. We know we haven't been perfect. Who has in a 1 in 100 year pandemic? But I tell you what, each time or every time where there are challenges, we just get straight back in there, fix it and get on with it, and we keep making the same assumption that Australians will pull through if we always back them in. Thank you very much for your attention.
Authorised S. Morrison, Liberal, Canberra.
The former Balmain Leagues Club site is a decade-long derelict debacle.
Because it's been an eyesore for 10 years and there's something that needed to be done with the site.
Last week it was set alight. Vandals have targeted it for years. Developers have grand plans to knock it down and rebuild apartments, commercial spaces and a town square. But the state government stopped them. It wanted the site to dig the Western Harbour Tunnel.
We could have done this 2 years ago, and in the intervening period there's been several fires.
But now the state government has had a change of heart. It no longer needs the site. So developers Heworth can forge ahead. While they're pleased, they want compensation for the trouble.
Our financial losses are in the tens of millions of dollars.
Any payout would come from taxpayers.
Transport is now working with affected stakeholders.
The government can't say yet how much it may have to pay or what it will do to make the site safe after last week's fire.
They'll comply with those arrangements in relation to remediation of the site.
This debacle could have been avoided if the government sat down and talked to the site owner rather than suing them in the courts.
Locals are thrilled the eyesore will be transformed, but are wary of what developers may have in mind.
We should be keeping this village feel.
too, but I don't mind the fact that the place is going to get a bit of an uplift. It needs it, but I don't want it to go too high.
Some would like to see another leagues club on the site. Right now, it seems anything would be an improvement. Phoebe Bowden, ABC.
Well, it will be an improvement, but look at what's happened. Do you reckon that is the right way to go? Today, the news that came out also is about the Toombul Shopping Centre, which we know forever that it has always been there. Anyone living in Brisbane always, if you talk about Toombul Shopping Centre, everyone knows where it is, and it's been there for so many years. It's now going to be bulldozed. Something's going to be happening there. Not quite sure what. We don't know. We don't have all the facts yet. But all we know is that big, heavy machineries have moved in, and the whole thing would be bulldozed because it will be too much to repair. There's extensive damages done to the infrastructure, to the electrical part, to the lifts, to the elevators, and that, it will be far better and easier to bulldoze the dog, start from scratch, build something new, then try to fix all the ones with all the damaged ones. Though some shops have reported that their shops had been untouched by the flood, but overall scheme of things is not looking good. So something new is coming. We will let you know what's going to be happening there. Well, right now on TV and on news articles and on shows, what can you say, what can't you say? With all the trainings and all the lessons on slander and libel and, being careful, many things do happen as per this report.
All right, well, I think on that note, we're going to leave this part of our election coverage.
Oh, no, exactly. Let's just do it.
Will that be 7.5
hours? Out of us now, Sal.
Do we get some
There must be a record for this stuff.
Yeah. 7.5 hours on AM.
Yeah, you get a free six-pack if we make it do one.
Anthony,
one point also. This is double dissolution.
I've been told, hang on, the previous record was 12:45 AM for our, which is now. One more minute. Sorry, Eric Napper, who's in my ear. We're going for one more minute. Anthony.
I'll sing the Up Cronulla song if you like.
I'll sing the Port Bell.
Once the Senate takes its seat, it's there for 2 years. It can't be dissolved. Can't have another half-Senate election for 2 years now, which means if Parliament does become difficult, there's only two options, which is a separate House election or another double dissolution. So you're going to hear a lot more about options.
With that record-breaking statement.
Yeah, we've broken the record. Suck on that, Kerry O'Brien.
You couldn't let it go. See,
that's how loose you get at 1 a.m.
Let's just wind back from that moment.
He's in
That's been waiting to get out all night.
It's line of the night. It's line of the night. On that note, Scott Morrison, Penny Wong, you have been absolute troopers. Thank you so much for coming and sharing all your insights. We really appreciate it. Annabelle, thank you very much, especially for that bus line. That was line of the night. Chris, thank you very much. Anthony, you truly blow my mind. You're just so brilliant. It's just, you do such a great public service. Thank you very, very much. Thank you to all of our ABC team behind the scenes, gigantic and excellent group of people.
So there you go, a lighter moment, and of course it's good to see everyone having a good of a laugh and suck on that guy. Well, that was just amazing, very, very, very creative, and it takes someone as experienced as him to come up with that. Well, ladies and gentlemen, right now it's 9:30, so it's time to go to our daily India report.
Welcome to the Daily India Report that brings you reports, interviews, features and much more on India and the Indian diaspora. Indian External Affairs Minister Jaishankar launches Ambassador Rajiv Bhatia's book on India-Africa relations. Indian External Affairs Minister Jaishankar launched Ambassador Rajiv Bhatia's book on India-Africa relations, Changing Horizons, on May 17th. Jaishankar recalled how the shared experiences of oppression between India and Africa generated a common desire for freedom and independence. India-Africa relations are truly deep-rooted and go back into the recesses of history, said External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar as he touched upon the shared bonding of fighting against colonialism. Dr. Jaishankar said, quote, "The era of Western imperialism strengthened the contacts, sometimes in paradoxical fashion. Indian labour was brought to Africa to work in colonial infrastructure projects and commercial ventures. It certainly led to a greater cultural interpenetration, but it also eventually created a modern Indian diaspora in Africa." End quote. Minister recalled how the shared experiences of oppression between India and Africa generated a common desire for freedom and independence. He said Indians can never forget that India's freedom struggle owes so much to the campaigns that Mahatma Gandhi first practiced in Africa and then brought back to India. External Affairs Minister noted that this shared bonding of fighting against colonialism is deeply emotional one, very difficult to explain to those who have not gone through it. A day after Indian Prime Minister's visit to Nepal, Naveen Srivastava was appointed as India's ambassador to Nepal. Seasoned diplomat Naveen Srivastava on May 17th appointed as India's ambassador to Nepal. The Ministry of External Affairs announced the appointment a day after the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi paid a visit to Lumbini in Nepal. Srivastava, a 1993 batch Indian Foreign Service, is currently serving as Additional Secretary in Ministry of External Affairs. Vinay Mohan Quatra, who became Foreign Secretary over 2 weeks ago, was serving as India's envoy to Nepal before Srivastava's appointment. In his capacity as Additional Secretary in the East Asia Division, Srivastava headed the Indian delegation in several rounds of diplomatic talks in the virtual format with China on the eastern Ladakh border row. He was also part of the Indian delegation in a few rounds of military talks between the two sides on the border row. Nepal is important for India in the context of its overall strategic interest in the region, and the leaders of the two countries have often noted the age-old roti-beti relationship. Nepal shares a border of over 1,850 kilometers with 5 Indian states of Sikkim, West Bengal, Bihar, Uttar Pradesh and Uttarakhand. The Indian-Nepal Treaty of Peace and Friendship of 1950 forms the bedrock of the special relations between the two countries. Indian Defence Minister Rajnath Singh launches 2 indigenously built warships. The Indian Defence Minister on May 17th launched 2 indigenously built warships, Surat and Udaygiri, at the Mazagon docks in Mumbai. This is the first time that the 2 indigenously built warships have been launched concurrently. The Mazagon Dock Shipbuilders Limited said, "MDL is a premier ship and submarine building public sector company. Surat is the 4th ship of the Project 15B destroyers, which heralds a significant makeover of P-15A destroyers and is named after the commercial capital of Gujarat state and also the second largest commercial hub of Western India after Mumbai," the Navy said. The Project 15B class of ships are the Navy's next-generation stealth-guided missile destroyers being built at the MDL. Udaygiri, named after a mountain range in Andhra Pradesh state, is the 3rd ship of Project 17A frigates. It is a follow-on of the P-17 frigates Shivalik class with improved stealth features, advanced weapons and sensors, and the platform management systems, the Navy said. The new warship is the reincarnation of the erstwhile Udaygiri, the Leander class ASW frigate, which saw numerous challenging operations in its illustrious service to the country spanning over 3 decades from February 1976 to August 2007, it added. Indian President Ramnath Kovind on his 4th visit inaugurates a street named after Ambedkar in Jamaican capital. Indian President Ramnath Kovind has inaugurated a street named in the honor of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar in the Jamaican capital and a monument highlighting the work of the architect of India's constitution. The newly inaugurated avenue is part of the Tower Street in the downtown Kingston, according to the Jamaica Information Service, a government agency responsible for disseminating information about government programs, projects and services. A monument highlighting the work of Dr. Ambedkar was also unveiled by Minister of Local Government and Rural Development Desmond McKenzie and President Kovind. Indian President Ramnath Kovind inaugurated Dr. Ambedkar Avenue in downtown Kingston. On the occasion, Kovind said,
"The Ambedkar Avenue in this beautiful city of Kingston. It fills me with great pride to see that one of the ablest sons of India has been recognized so far away from his home. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar is primarily known as the architect of the Indian Constitution. He introduced progressive ideals for the social and economic empowerment of the depressed classes into the Indian Constitution. Dr. Ambedkar educated and inspired the people towards the goal of removing inequality. His efforts have borne tangible results and have transformed the lives of millions in India. Some people may wonder about the relevance of Dr. Ambedkar to Jamaica. Let us always remember that icons like Dr. Ambedkar and Marcus Garvey cannot be limited to just one nation or community. Their message of equality of all and their appeal to end all forms of discrimination has universal resonance. Therefore, Dr. Ambedkar's message is as relevant to Indians as it is to Jamaicans and to people in every part of the world.
The Indian President Ram Nath Kovind, accompanied by his wife Savita Kovind, arrived in Jamaica on 15th May on a state visit, the first by any Indian president to the Caribbean country. The presidential visit is happening in the 60th anniversary year of establishment of diplomatic relations between the two countries. Jamaica and India have friendly relations. Jamaica is also one of the Girmithya countries with a 70,000 strong Indian diaspora which acts as a living bridge with India. Indian Meteorological Department issues red alert as Assam state continues to battle floods. 400,000 people have been displaced. The Indian Meteorological Department on May 18 forecast very heavy to extremely heavy rainfall as at least 8 people lost their lives in flash floods in Assam. Along with Assam, other adjoining states will also receive the heavy downpour. However, there is no red alert for them. Notably, Assam is reeling under heavy downpour and flooding leading to landslides in some parts of the state over the last few days. The gigantic landslides and waterlogging have also damaged the state's infrastructure including bridges, roads and railway tracks. Security forces including the Indian Army, Indian Air Force and Assam Rifles along with National Disaster Response Force are also called in for the rescue operations amid the heavy downpour. Indian Home Minister Amit Shah on May 17th expressed his concern about the situation in Assam in the wake of heavy rainfall in several parts of the state. He also spoke to Assam Chief Minister Himanta Biswa Sarma to take stock of the situation. He also assured all possible help from the central government. National Gallery of Modern Art holds week-long celebrations to mark International Museum Day. The National Gallery of Modern Art, located in the national capital Delhi, is holding week-long celebrations for the International Museum Day. International Museum Day is an international day held annually on or around May 18th, coordinated by the International Council of Museums. NGMA has organized special activities and programs to mark the occasion. This event is being organized from May 16 to 20 under the theme of Power of Museums as mentioned by the International Council of Museums. The International Council of Museums has been organizing International Museum Day for the museum community every year since 1977. The purpose of this day is to make the visitors aware of the importance of the museum, cultural exchange and promotion of cultures. The program began with an exhibition titled Brasilia and Making of Modern Brazil on May 16, 2022 under the aegis of the Cultural Exchange Program between India and Brazil. The program was inaugurated in the presence of Union Minister of Housing and Urban Affairs Hardeep Singh Puri and the Minister of State for Culture Meenakshi Lekhi as the chief guest. Netflix has set the date of May 20th for the premiere of Shahid Kapoor's Tara Jersey. Shahid Kapoor's Tara Jersey is heading to Netflix for its digital release on May 20th. The streaming platform announced on May 17th. A Hindi remake of the national award-winning Telugu sports drama of the same name, Jersey, was theatrically released on April 22nd after multiple delays due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Netflix.
So, ladies and gentlemen, that's about all we have for you in this segment. It's been wonderful having your company on this 19th day of May, and we might finish off with the Daily India Report.
That's all in today's bulletin.
So until tomorrow, it's goodbye from us, and we will be tomorrow bringing to you all the functions and events taking place in the weekend. Let's see if we can get the ones happening at the moment and see if we can take a quick look at all the ones. We know that Sakuntala has been sold out, and very well done, Anu and the team, for having that wonderful play all completely sold out, and that's on Saturday, the 21st.